Well, this was a surprising year. In general, yes, but in gaming, there was a lot more positive surprises than I was expecting. Therefore, without much further ado, RedScotGaming's Top 10 Games of 2016. Number 10. Alright, I know this isn't the best start, but just stick with me, alright? This one isn't indicative of the entire video, just bear with me, okay? No Man's Sky.
No Man's Land.
Okay, yes, I know this game will probably make many disappointments of the year's list, maybe even some worst games of the year, hyperbolic or not, but really, I'm putting it here based on two things. The experience, at least in the first hour or so, and the concept. So really this is number 10, the first 60 minutes of No Man's Sky, but whatever. No Man's Sky is essentially a space flight simulator with RPG elements featuring a procedurally generated, nearly infinite-sized universe. No, I didn't actually read into the claims contradicting the infinite size of the universe. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but looking at that star map and simply zooming out from your current position, you would get that impression. But it's that kind of feeling of scale that this game does do very well. Starting off marooned on a totally random alien world in which no other player aside from yourself has probably ever set foot on, you have to repair your ship, the Reliant Robin, as Sam and I endearingly named it, and escape, beginning your journey into... well, we'll get to that. Well, okay, we won't get to that because the game doesn't, so moving on. Jumping from planet to planet is just a spectacle. Yes, the first time is the best. Alright, what is that? Oh dear Jesus! But from a flight simulator perspective, it really never does lose its charm. Blasting past space debris, watching your distance counter tick down from the millions of kilometers. My biggest problem here really is that there aren't many vessels in the game which look like they have a Millennium Falcon style back room where you could go make some coffee while your ship makes the journey. When I played the game with this mentality, I had fun, role-playing as some lone space pioneer. And there are key elements in the game which feel like payoffs. Finding a huge alien space station for the first time, landing and exploring its one hallway. Speaking to new alien species, being attacked by some alien fauna, or sand willies. And of course, naming shit. Naming stuff is as fun as you yourself can make it. Whether it's naming an ice planet, Space Skyrim, or a star system after Earth's greatest hero, I spent a fair amount of time discovering planets and actually giving them, some of the time, well thought out names, following my own conventions. Ice planets after ice gods from one pantheon or another, fire or radioactive worlds after demons or fire gods or gods of war. New Mojave for its arid environment, Mesozoa for its Jurassic-like wildlife, and, yes, meanwhile, Sand Willy! Please allow me a moment just to share some of my favourite discoveries made during my space travels. Alternatively, there are times when you might be tempted into straight up space piracy, attacking other ships, both fighters and huge heavily armed freighters. Whether this actually has any payoff or not, I don't know, because aside from hit and run attacks on individual vessels, most of my larger scale endeavours were met with more space fuzz than I could handle. Ah, bloody hell! Quick! Emergency evacuation! It's a trap! Space combat itself is simple and pretty much geared towards killing you. There are no real evasive maneuvers you can do against a squad of homing laser pirates. Best you can hope for is taking a couple down with you. But as you upgrade weapons, hull, shields, you can make successful stands at least some of the time. However, the randomness and regularity of these attacks, especially when out in the open, away from a world or space station, makes for the casual coffee in the back enjoy the scenery joyrides a bit more tedious. It's unfortunate though that larger scale combat, fleet warfare, isn't a bastard thing. Again, No Man's Sky on the whole is a game of occasional moments of brilliance in a package of otherwise missed opportunities. Awesome vistas with nothing to populate it with, huge worlds with fuck all on them, ship upgrades with no real end goal, a massive procedurally generated customizable universe with no other players. Now, other people can and have gone through in detail everything promised versus everything delivered with this game, but that's not what we're here for. This game missed a lot of marks badly, from being one of my biggest excitements of the year to falling right to the bottom of the pile of games I felt I had to play. There's a reason it's down here at number 10. But to its credit, there are reasons it's on the list in the first place as well. Mainly because I needed 10 games to fill this list, but whatever. Number 8. Civilization has been a staple in turn-based strategy for XCOM for years. The last major installment, Civilization 5, was nearly perfect for me. To build an empire from the ground up, creating an entire history for it, shaping the geopolitical world. It was by no means a perfect game. In particular, game-breaking stability issues, even on decent hardware, put a constant dampener on an otherwise always exciting idea to start a new game as this other country this time I'll be a peacemaker, this time I'll be an autocratic empire, whatever. But naturally, when Civilization 6 was announced, I was pretty excited, buying the game on Steam on release day and starting my first game as Rome, in honour of my first game on Civilization 5. To those who've gotten to know Civ 5, 6 will be comfortably familiar. But there are a few gameplay tweaks I experienced in my first couple hours of playing that I quite liked. Cities now expand into separate districts, industrial, residential, etc., each with their own set of buildings and benefits, allowing you to create industrial towns or cultural metropoli cities. Late game ideology and cultural paths of liberty, honour, tradition, etc. have been replaced with a simpler yet more engaging political system, selecting from different ideologies, classical republic or autocracy, and up to communism, fascism later on, each providing a different number of policy slots, whether it's bonus damage against barbarians, or increased industrial output in cities, etc. Combat hasn't changed drastically, however a few tweaks here and there have made it more enjoyable. Old typical situations such as spending hundreds of years trying in vain to get your archers to do something useful in a battle, their range unable to go over your infantry, is not such a common problem. I like the art style of this game, it's more colourful than before. The characters, true, look cartoony and caricature-ish, some more than others, but I like them, and I like the selection of leaders so far, although many more in DLC are inevitable. Now, I understand it's a new game and mods and DLC will fix this, in fact, probably have by now, I just haven't noticed, but I was disappointed by the lack of map variety. Civ 5 seemed to have far more, in fact, far more than I've ever had to use, being someone who's almost exclusively ever played on the Earth resembling one. But there's just the thing, where the hell's the Earth map? I found this particularly strange starting my first game, and this most obvious thing being absent. I personally prefer the real world to play on because it gives more context to your conquests and expansion. Yay, my empire covers all of Europe, rather than, yay, my empire covers this blob. Anyway, you get the point. It's Civilization, it's a huge game, and there's lots to talk about, but I've only really touched on the changes, and only a handful of them at that. To be perfectly honest, this is more of a first impressions from a few hours of play, rather than a full-fledged review. Coupled with a lot of releases coming out, and my own busy schedule, I had spent a lot more time this year on another strategy game. And that one almost consumed my life. But more on that later. But learning my lessons from that game might be another reason why I avoid clicking the next turn button too many times in Civ 6. I love Civ, and I'm certain I'll have a lot of fun playing this once more mods and DLC content is out there, and just once I have more time on my plate. As much fun as I had with Civ 5, I believe this is a worthy enough successor, which will only improve with time. Number 7. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. If you're a regular viewer of my channel, it shouldn't be a surprise this appearing somewhere on the list. I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan, and a fan of the first Xenoverse, which landed at number 2 on last year's list. But it's exactly for that reason why I looked at this sequel coming out only a year and a half later with a high degree of scrutiny. I'll say now though, I do love this game. It improves on the original in almost every category, at least in minor ways, at most with massive changes. But if I rated the first game, as I did, on my expectations versus what we actually got, then this game doesn't quite reach that same bar. The worst offending area being with its main story mode. But let's start with the pros. Our new hub world, Canton City, is superb. Probably one of the best upgrades from Xenoverse 1. With mounts and flying, a lot of variety in the areas, and quite a number of side activities to do. It has a much stronger MMO feel to it, clearly modelling itself even closer after the old Dragon Ball Online games. I've spent a lot of time outside of actual missions just dicking about here, and not to mention it's just visually appealing, topped off with a nice big statue of your character from the first game in the middle. But in addition, parallel to its main hub world, are 5 smaller sections, the Time Rifts, portals to different places trapped in time which also happen to be iconic areas from the series. Who'd have thunked it? And each rift actually has its own quest line, though some are far better than others. Frieza's ship was the standout one for me, seeing you climb the ranks, pick sides, train with and overtake different characters, eventually becoming apprentice to and potentially overthrowing Frieza or his brother, and becoming Emperor of the Universe. Once again we have Xenoverse's defining character creation. I said this about the original and I'll say it again. Character creation makes everything better. To be able to put your own character, whether a representation of yourself as the player, or some crazy fighter of your own imagining, into the otherwise same old Dragon Ball story, is just pure wish fulfillment. And as requested in my first review of the game, they have added a substantial amount of customization options, probably doubling the choices for everything, from hairstyles to eyes, horns to head things. Combat seems much faster, more interesting, and actually I felt a lot more challenging. The enemy AI seems faster, but I'll still take this over Xenoverse 1's "I'm purple now, so I'm allowed to break the rules of the game." As well as your own character, there are a number of notable roster additions from the shows as well as from the movies. Android 16 and Imperfect Cell, Cooler and Janemba, Turles and Slug, as well as a new personal favourite from mine from the recently concluded story arc in Dragon Ball Super, Black, who was a pre-order bonus and very fun to play as. There's new characters, new maps, new moves, new clothing options, and then you start to see the theme of this new game. It's the same framework, just with more stuff. The additions are cool, welcome and expected, but where's the meat of this new release? Where's the new game? Yes, it's great having more hairstyles, but why hasn't the customization system been overhauled to allow more slots for different items, to allow more varied body types, and to allow any item of clothing to be colorized, not just a handful? Yes, these handful of new movie characters are cool, but why are we still missing huge gaps in the basic roster? Semi-perfect Cell, second and third form Frieza, a certain monarch of low temperature. But this brings into focus a problem I find at the heart of this game. A lack of creativity, meaning huge missed opportunities when it comes to the core game's story. Once again, you play as a new time patroller, travelling to different points in time to stop harmful changes, at which point we start to experience a lot of familiarity. Say it with me everyone, Saiyan Saga, Ginyu Saga, Frieza Saga, Android Cell Games, Boo Saga, Beerus, then the final boss. It feels very much the same. I mean, I get it, it's time travel, so we're seeing the same events again, just slightly altered. But it doesn't change the fact that the bulk of the game, until the last act, which I actually rather liked, is rehash. I get that Dragon Ball has been running the same scheme for years successfully, and it's what most of the fans want, but I would have appreciated and respected a lot more deviation from the norm, alongside the usual plot points if necessary, or just a bit more goddamn imagination with more entertaining what-if scenarios. No more of this weak, "It's just the same except he's a bit stronger than usual," or "It's just the same except it's your boy, Cooler," and then never referenced again. The game's plot does shine at a few points. The Bardock plotline, and some good actual character moments from Trunks, seeming to struggle between his duty to prevent time changes and his wish to save the Gohan of his timeline. These are some good points, and especially given both Bardock and future Gohan feature on the cover art, you'd have thought they'd been a bit more of the focus. The game doesn't really feel like it's starting until the last act. The last few missions actually felt like your character's story, with other characters actually reacting to your presence, instead of just totally ignoring the guy who showed up to fight for a couple minutes then disappear. I started to like Towa and Mira as bad guys, and once again, Beerus is the best character. I do love these games, and that's why I'm so critical of its flaws. If you're a Dragon Ball fan, or a fan of the first game, absolutely I recommend it. Obviously, if you're not, then you don't really need me to tell you whether or not this is your thing. If however you're a Dragon Ball fan who simply never got around to playing the first one, I gotta say, unless you can and want to buy both, there's very little need. Xenoverse 2 has the added content, has the improved gameplay, has the improved customization, and most of the main story points of the show that if you're a fan, you'll be wanting to see. In any case, for fans like me, Xenoverse 2 is another fun addition to this immortal franchise, and another great game in 2016. Number 6. When a certain game titled Battlefield 5 Armageddon began cropping up online, there was a lot of speculation and hype from fans of the series, including myself and a lot of my friends. Speculation on where this flagship shooter would go next, having gone from World War II to modern, dipping its toes in Vietnam and sci-fi along the way. However, with Call of Duty announcing yet another futuristic warfare techno-masturbatory turd burger, there was a little concern that DICE would be dragged down the same path in a bid to outdo its main competitor. But whisperings of a historical shooter were soon proving right, with the announcement of Battlefield 1. Yeah, the naming convention's kinda weird, but whatever, World War I. The move to set the next Battlefield game in the comparatively unexplored in gaming First World War was almost as far removed from its rival as it could have been. But after months of excitement and concern, I was incredibly pleased to find out what has probably been my most enjoyed Battlefield game for a long time. Here we have a new game and refreshingly a new era, and with this one I feel I can actually make this my go-to multiplayer game for a good while to come, something that Battlefield 4 for me personally didn't quite manage. First off, graphically it looks awesome. There, Frostbite looks good, moving on. More design speaking than graphical power though, these battlefields themselves are gorgeous. Even the blasted and burnt up landscapes of the Western Front are, in their own way, really beautiful maps. The Arabian deserts and Italian Alps, it's just beautiful. And more to the point, for a game people were expressing concern over the content and variety for, DICE did a very good job in including the less iconic First World War theatres, with desert and urban, forest and mountains, as well as the trenches. The warring powers involved too, with the British, German, Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires, as well as the United States and Italy. Comparing this to the Russian-American dynamic of the previous several games, plus China and Battlefield 4, it should give a game with much greater sense of variety. Unfortunately though in this particular aspect, not really. For a start, by scrapping soldier and vehicle customization, they probably missed a mark. Having a slightly personalised take on your British assault soldier or your German scout could have been fun. I realise disruptive camouflage patterns weren't really in use until the Second World War, and even if it was, not by the common regular infantry, but little touches to the uniform, headwear, patches, pouches, that sort of thing, could have been really good. That said, they have done a decent job at weapons variety. Yes, there's a lot of automatic weapons. Yes, World War I was mainly bolt-action rifles, but there's also far too many tanks. I mean, Germany only built like 20 in the actual war. Let's remove tanks then along with our trench guns if you want accuracy. Or you could keep these in because, you know, they're fun. Now if you really need me to go on about the multiplayer gameplay, then you've probably never played a Battlefield game before. Battlefield 1 is the same in principle. Large map, combined warfare, tanks, infantry, bombers, fighters, artillery. It's about team play to win and control objectives. Gas attacks are one era-appropriate addition, requiring use of personal gas masks, while another new addition to the online are behemoth units, armoured trains or massive blimps, which come into play as one side is losing to give them a helping hand. On that note, aerial combat, in general, I feel is hugely improved. I am a fan of flying. Early days of Battlefield 3 were great as a pilot, but in time and crossing into the following game, it became a very niche part of the game, with the occasional attempt of getting into the air being met with an almost immediate and inexplicable death by some multi-dimensional soul-seeking surface-to-face missile. Flying in Battlefield 1, however, is fast becoming one of my favourite roles in the multiplayer. One of the few real positives I had for DICE's Battlefront game was the aerial combat with the TIE fighters and the X-Wings, and I think parts of this has actually transferred over. Most obviously, of course, being the control scheme, which I actually quite liked in Battlefront. Don't know if that's a minority opinion or whatever, but blah. Moving on from the multiplayer is the single player campaign, which I actually, and it's been a while since I've said this about a Battlefield game, a Bad Company 2 while, actually rather liked. Battlefield 1 went with probably the most unconventional yet strangely appropriate ways of telling its story, which is an anthology of what I can only describe as short films in video game form. Despite their somewhat underwhelming length, I was surprised how much I actually dug some of these, and how hard a couple of them actually hit me. The last couple Battlefield campaigns felt like tack-ons, things I just played for completionist value and then never went back to. With these short mini-campaigns though, I would actually kinda be happy if they added more. I mean, there's going to be DLC, perhaps a couple missions with each of these packs? I heard something about a Russian DLC in the future. Maybe a story covering Russia's withdrawal from the war with the revolution going on could be interesting. Or how about one actually from the German perspective, which currently there isn't. It would really add to more of that grey area, no side was really right or wrong impression. Something that the single player clearly tried to set up with its truly fantastic opening mission. It was a war meant to end all wars, which in reality did little but shove a generation through a meat grinder and cause the collapse of most of the world's great empires. But now, it's a video game whose major competition is a Transformer Doggoraptor. What a time to be alive. Battlefield 1. It's not COD. I don't know, I'm tired. Next. Number 5. Rise of the Tomb Raider. Yes, it came out in 2015 technically, but it only got rolled out on PS4 this year. Worth the wait? Definitely. I hugely enjoyed the 2013 Tomb Raider, the first in this reboot of the franchise. A painfully gritty but extremely well done rebranding of this classic series. I played it through multiple times and was inspired by it to go retry some of the older games. So with that said, I was hyped for the return of Lara Croft, following her brutal experiences in the first game. To the developer's credit, despite the delay for us here on the PlayStation, the eventual release, which happened to coincide with the 20-year anniversary of this series, includes all the DLC, unique box art, and a game case, yes, I'm reviewing boxes now apparently, actually doubles as a small art book including official concepts and selected fan art. Nice touch. But anyway, onto the game. Clearly shaken by the supernatural forces she witnessed on Yamatai Island, the new Lara Croft, now in full adventure mode, has become obsessed with the work of her late father, who seemingly killed himself after his academic fall from grace, while following a trail of evidence leading to some biblical mythical key to immortality. And although she'd lived most of her life thinking her father was crazy, well, battling an ancient Japanese lightning zombie lady can change your perspective somewhat. However, also interested in her father's work is Trinity, an ancient order which has for its entire history sought after the same artifact. The story isn't entirely original, with elements of Indiana Jones, Assassin's Creed, and probably some previous Tomb Raider games. But I appreciated the personal aspect this has for Lara herself. I always took the 2013 Tomb Raider game as a transition story from the vulnerable young version of Lara into the dual pistol wielding fearless badass we've come to know. But with Rise of the Tomb Raider, we've got Crazy Lara, travelling across the world fighting bears just to work through some daddy issues, and possibly save the world from a crazy cult of militant zealots. The gameplay is much the same as the last game, with a mix of platforming and third-person shooting, as well as elements of stealth, puzzle solving, and some RPG undertones, particularly with material collecting, crafting, and upgrading. It's perfectly solid enough. Weapons include standard pistols and rifles, as well as a series of improvable bows, melee weapons, and throwables. Platforming and the multi-dimensional combat works well, with the exception of key story missions. Shooting gallery, linear-style combat sequences are replaced with more open-world areas, allowing different tactics and means of approaching a situation. Lara can climb trees and wait for enemies to pass, use the undergrowth or shadows to move, lay traps, create distractions, climb ropes, scale cliffs. Basically what I'm getting at is it's a fun world to navigate around, as well as explore, which there is plenty of opportunity and incentive to do so, with collectible historical artifacts as well as hidden tombs acting as side puzzle quests. Camilla Luddington does a great job as the voice of Lara once again, but I almost have to feel sorry for her recording so many goddamn pain noises for every time Lara rolls down another rocky cliff, the 7th that day, into a fast-flowing river infested by fucking tigers. Why is this woman not dead yet? Stop adventuring for fuck's sake, stay at home, lock Jeeves in a freezer for a few hours, just leave the crazy cultists to their own shit. Putin can handle them. There is one additional gameplay change which I want to talk about though. Alternate costumes. Because, once again, customization makes everything better. These alternate skins are available at any point in the game from any campfire, these being the game's main hubs for character skill and equipment related alterations. One of my personal favourites is a medieval style plate armour which, while being worn, makes me feel like I'm playing Dragon Age or something. The armour even looks a little bit like ebony armour from Skyrim. I thoroughly enjoyed this game. If you want to play Tomb Raider but couldn't quite get to grips with the classics, and you like games along the lines of the Batman Arkham series or Shadow of Mordor, perhaps even Little Assassin's Creed and Last of Us, then this just might be one for you to consider. Number 4. When Bethesda, developers of Fallout, The Elder Scrolls and Dishonored, announced that it was manufacturing the return of the grandpappy of all first-person shooters, the reveal left certain persons online, a loud and obnoxious minority I'm sure, to cry about its unnecessary, gruesome and over-the-top violence. So naturally I went and bought it. Doom is a mindless, over-the-top, retrograde game, and it's easily one of the best first-person shooters in years. It's fucking amazing. A game with an almost regressive lack of innovation, about shooting lots of guns at lots of monsters for 8 hours or so. Yet, at least for a time, it was contending for the number 1 spot on this list. If you said this to me a year ago, I would have thought it unlikely that something so simplistic, retrograde, even backwards, could come out on top. But it wouldn't be the first time this year.
Heavy-handed election joke!
To make things clear, when I say retrograde and lacking innovation, what I mean is, Doom is a near-perfect, modern, classic shooter. Think back to a time in gaming, where the player could carry around the equivalent firepower of an NRA rally in each pocket, where tactical firefights came second to jumping about the area like a fucking madman looking for health packs, and where armour could be picked up by literally walking into the big green floating suit of armour. There's no gimmicks, aside from being so comparatively normal in an industry where games need more shit in them. Shove in the hover jetpack mission segment, and the Mechanoraptor transformer with customizable shoelaces. Fuck it! This game has very little narrative to speak of, but the story is simple enough. But the real story of the game is so much more entertaining. Yes, demonic forces have started invading through this ardent energy rift on Mars, and everyone is pretty much dead. However, Doom Guy, the same Doom Guy who fought demons game after game, has been awoken from his slumber, and after seeing the state of the place, he's fucking pissed. For fuck's sake, not again! Now, on a murderous rampage, the game becomes a fight for survival sorry, I should have specified. For the demons, it becomes a fight for survival, as these monsters have had a great time up until now killing scientists, have unwittingly awoken an ancient and terrible evil, and must race against time to stop him before he punches every fucking one of them to a bloody pulp. I actually am entirely taking the piss here. I honestly think this is the implied story of the game. I like to imagine there are some lab coat wearing demon scientists on the other side of the portal going, Shit, shut down the portal, shut it down, Gordon! Doom Guy is basically Rage if it could be suited up in power armor and handed a minigun. Pretty much the whole game could be summed up with that one scene where Peter loses it in the Spider-Man animated series.
I am invincible! Get back here, Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
On this note, I was surprised by the sense of humour Doom actually has. I admit I haven't played much of the old Doom games to compare, but maybe it's some of Bethesda's own Fallout-like dark humour shining through. Whether it's movie references on specific death screens, or hidden collectibles, or just the comedic level of violence. Additional points of consideration include a good roster of enemies, a fantastic soundtrack, and the presence of multiplayer, which I can't actually speak for. If I had any gripes, it would be with a somewhat abrupt ending. Yes, it's all well and good being a game that revels in just being non-stop demonicide all the way through, but if you're going to run at a constant high, in the end, when it inevitably arrives, it's going to be a bit of a drop. I didn't actually see the end coming. When I say that, I don't mean in the, oh what a twist, didn't see that coming. I mean the twist was actually pretty obvious and called it in the first 10 seconds of the game, if you've watched my video.
And resolve this problem in a way that benefits us both.
I think you're clearly a bad guy. No, I mean I didn't actually see the end of the game coming at that moment. Up until that point, the game had been escalating and escalating, and I was ready for it to escalate further. Move on to the next act, but no. Okay, we're done then. Everybody out, I guess. I'm not saying it was a bad ending, it was fine, it was just, at the time, I had no idea I was playing the end of the game. But whatever, I'm not holding it against it. The credits sequence made it all worthwhile. Yes, I'm giving props to the game's credits sequence, it was that awesome. So, if you pine for the days of old school shoot 'em ups, the Serious Sams, Duke Nukems and Dooms of old, or even games like the original Half-Life, I think you might find quite a lot to enjoy in Doom. That, or you just want to cut a 15-foot hellspawn vertically in two with a chainsaw. I won't king shame.
No, I give up. Come on. You're supposed to be the good guy. You can't do this!
Number 3. Overwatch. Now for me, this one could have been a hit or a miss. Indeed, as a game in general, it could have been. Looking at a similarly styled game coming out at the same time, not doing so well. Overwatch was really made by a superb, interest-piquing, hype-building marketing campaign, kicked off with a Pixar-like animated short, showing off colourful characters, fast action, and with a hint of intriguing world-building. I caught it on my newsfeed and was enthralled. What was this game? Indeed, as much as I was sold on the short, I had no idea what this game was. An RPG, a Champions Online style MMO, an online-only team-based arena shooter. So much character and setup, a clear battle of good and evil, for it to come down to Team Fortress 2 does anime convention, featuring Professor Harambe. But I decided to give it a go, hoping my doubts would be proved wrong, and I love it. Whatever my initial hopes were upon hearing about this game, what it turned out to be was some of the most fun I've had online all year. Letting you choose from a wide roster of characters, each with unique designs, abilities, and catering to different playstyles. The core gameplay of Overwatch is 6v6 objective-orientated combat, with attack and defend game modes. In truth, that's about it. I was a little surprised that within my first few games, I hadn't found much variety in the actual game modes. Either a fully capture points versus defend points, or a mix of that with some kind of cart push objective. But with the variety of characters, or heroes, to play these games with, keeps it entertaining round after round. It's just fun. But there is a certain level of skill and tactical thinking involved. Not every situation can be successfully approached by the same character, and team cooperation is important. Within the Overwatch community, it's something of a meme of all players running with Soldier 76, or the last person in the team picking a third Hanzo rather than a goddamn support unit. In terms of gameplay, I really have no criticisms unless I nitpick. Hanzo's Puff the Magic Dragon ultimate has always grated on me, the loot system fucking sucks, and I've always found Reaper to be overpowered as fuck. Or I guess as one person wrote in a post I saw, he's not overpowered, he's just derpy. Oof, look at me in the 8-Tread cosplay! Oh, you're shooting back at me? Well, fuck you, I'm a ghost now. Teleport in and insta-kill everything ultimate play of the game, me. Oh, watch you don't cut yourself on that edge, Gabriel. Now, I admit at release, full price was a bit steep for an online-only game like this. Was there really enough content? Maybe not. But, to Blizzard's credit, their support for this game has been fantastic. Seasonal and holiday-related events, with new unlocks and skins, as well as what seems to be a gradual stream of new additions to the roster. And you know what the best thing about all this new stuff is? Free updates! Not paid DLC like I was expecting, but all of this is added with updates. This fact alone, as long as it continues, pretty much makes up for the issue I had of price versus content. My only major problem with this game is I feel it missed a huge opportunity, if only it had an in-game story. Notice I say in-game, because there is a story out there. There are comic strips, character backstories, and a growing number of animated shorts, doing something similar to what Valve did with its Meet the series of videos for Team Fortress 2. And if all of this content has convinced me of anything, it's that Overwatch deserves either to be made into a feature-length animated film, or it needs a goddamn story mode. It could be done. Gameplay doesn't even need to be hugely altered from the base formula of online. Think Star Wars Battlefront. No, the good ones. The campaign put you into the same kind of battles as the multiplayer, but with a set series of objectives and a narrative attached. Picture this. Mission 1, sent 20 years beforehand, when Overwatch was in its prime. Soldier 76 was still Jack Morrison, Reaper was Gabriel Reyes, and all the old heroes are in their prime fighting against the Omnics, the rebelling machines trying to overthrow mankind. After an introductory mission like this, we can get to the meat of the narrative, about Tracer and Wilson trying to rebuild the team 20 years later, and as more members join the team, more become available to use in the missions. Meanwhile, Reaper, Widowmaker and Sombra are doing whatever the fuck they're doing, trying to reignite war between humans and Omnics maybe. Perhaps even a certain bird-loving rehabilitated killing machine will be the key to stopping such a conflict. Yes, I'm talking about you, Android 16. Whatever, this is my pitch to Blizzard, take it or leave it. As it stands though, I adore this game. I hope they continue to support it with new content, and with a seemingly strong community around it, this seems likely. And maybe one day we could get a story mode. But for now, Overwatch. Meaningful final comment. Butts. Number 2. Every once in a while, I get a particular gaming itch I really need scratched. This could be, I really need an isometric party-based fantasy RPG, so I go out and find something like Dungeon Siege to fill the void. Or, I really want to waste time, achieve nothing, and crash as soon as I start having fun, so I play Gmod. But over the years, one of my most reoccurring and surprisingly difficult to satisfy itches is, I want a 4K empire building space strategy game. Believe me, I've tried. Endless Space, Galactic Civilization, Sins of a Solar Empire, even Empire at War. But for whatever reason, none of these have ever really got me. But this year, I stumbled onto a game which I think for the first time has genuinely met my every arbitrary and shifting requirement. Yeah! While also probably being the most addictive game I've played all year. And that is Paradox Interactive's Stellaris. Known for their absurdly in-depth 4K strategies such as Victoria and Hearts of Iron, the latter of which I have tried and failed horrendously at getting to grips with. God damn it, Poland, just stop being invaded! This maybe gave me some pause before investing in this possibly unplayable space game. But from within a few minutes of playing, I knew this wasn't going to be a problem, thanks in large part to a genuinely helpful tutorial AI and comfortably familiar enough gameplay to games like Civilization, which I'm obviously familiar with. Build a solid foundation for the game's main resource categories, send science ships to survey the planets in your system, mine worlds for minerals, mine worlds for energy sources, research worlds with science output, the sciences being split between physics, social and engineering, obviously catering to different aspects of development, and with a firm foundation for your early space age civilization, begin exploring nearby systems for resources, habitable planets, as well as your new neighbours in this galactic stage. With these simple steps in mind, you can get the ball rolling with your empire easily enough. And once the ball rolls, it's hard to stop. Like I said, this shit was addictive. 15 hours clocked on Steam in my first 4 days of owning the game, and I didn't even think I was at home for about a day and a half of that time. Before long, I had met a dozen or so other races, colonised and developed several new worlds, established 2 semi-autonomous sectors with appointed governors, and fought a short war, ostensibly for ending slavery within a neighbouring monarchistic empire of bat people, but, and known only to the highest levels of my government, was really about establishing a friendly buffer state between my northern territories and an aggressively expanding civilization of religious fanatical tortoises. Frankly, this is a game that's just perfect for me. I find an absurd amount of enjoyment just watching the blob with my flag grow and overtake all the lesser blobs of the universe. Yeah, I'm looking at you, you blob bastards. A big hurdle with me with games of this type, as I was saying, is that I can't get into the preset civs. But here, civilizations are entirely customizable, as well as randomly generated for the AI players each game, with a huge variety of weird alien genotypes to keep things interesting. From arachnid monstrosities to budgie people, fungal blobs to things you should never put your dick into. Empire name and flag design, architecture and planetary preferences, ship style, weapon types, even your mode of space travel are all customizable. With all that said though, if you really want, yes, there are mods. And for that matter, it's a pretty active mod community. If you want your space sim to have more of a Star Wars theme, a Mass Effect or Halo or whatever, this can be done pretty well. So if using your imagination and creating an entirely new culture doesn't strike your fancy, you always have this fallback. So, whether you're creating your new civilization or trying to emulate the Galactic Empire, you have great options to do so. Politically, you can set your empire up in many ways, choosing between moderate or fanatical in regards to militarism or pacifism, individualism or collectivism, spiritualism or materialism, all to determine the way you interact and how you're interacted with as a culture. Furthermore, your political system is determined based on those choices and can land anywhere from indirect democracy to despotic empire, military republic to absolute monarchy, just to name a few, all of which have benefits and setbacks, determining term length, if any, for your created leader, and how succession is decided. Because yes, elections are a thing, and no, you don't necessarily have control of who will be your leader should your current one die or leave office. This is a great extra dynamic, far removed from the eternal god kings of civilization that I'm used to. The demographic makeup of your empire will alter too. This adds a load more factors into play, with the earlier decided cultural attitudes of your people, collective militarists for example, creating tensions with the, Velociraptor folk of your empire, which of course, as you'll know if you've seen Jurassic Park, are pacifistic individualists. Then of course, with several large empires with differing ideologies vying over territory, there are going to be wars. Combat in Stellaris isn't about the individual fleet or ground tactics, but rather the larger scale strategy. All you really have control over is when to engage and when to retreat. Otherwise, it's a numbers game of which fleet has the greater power. The little things such as tactical abilities of assigned admirals to a fleet, increased speed, hull points, whatever, as well as shields and superior defensive tech can help tip the scales. In any case, it's visually entertaining enough to watch, despite not being a huge focus of the game. Honestly, there's so much else I could go over with this game. I haven't touched on ship designing, managing sectors, putting down rebellion, diplomacy, even the soundtrack, which is amazing. Stellaris just has everything that a game like this needs. This wasn't a game I was expecting to play this year, never mind enjoy so much, and a lot like my history with the Civilization games, I'm sure I'm going to be spending hundreds of more hours on this one, making sure to keep my blob the best blob in the galaxy. Bloody tortoises. And now, finally, we come to number 1.
Hold on, you've only talked about 8 games so far. In fact, you missed out number 9 entirely.
Right. Yes, I was hoping nobody would take notice of that. Here's the thing. It has been a very busy year for me. I was in shared accommodation for the first half of 2016, seriously hurting my ability to make videos. I began working a 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off job in July, meaning that I'm gone for huge stretches of time, moved into my own flat, restarted up the Xenoverse series, all while trying to get things ready for this video at the end of the year. So, because of this, there are a lot of games I wanted to play which I simply haven't had enough time to yet. So, that's why I reserved the number 9 spot on this year's list for the games I will play but wouldn't have managed to in time for this video, but that I have enough confidence in them from what I've seen that they are going to be worthwhile and also at least better than No Man's Sky. First and foremost, Titanfall. This one just came out at the wrong time. I had just started rolling with Battlefield 1, another major first-person multiplayer shooter. I had just bought Rise of the Tomb Raider, Xenoverse 2 was starting, Civ 6 was just released on the PC. To be honest, I wasn't even paying attention to the sequel of a mediocre Xbox exclusive except for PC. But I received word that not only was it available now on PS4, but also that it was good. Giant robot mech suits, flashy looking sci-fi multiplayer, definitely piquing my interest, but it'll have to wait. My only hope is that the player base doesn't dry up by the time I do try it, but once again, just the wrong release date. The next game won't have that last problem at least, The Last Guardian. Now, this one was a surprise. In development since the 40s or something. I'd seen trailers for this almost every year for fucking ever, but aside from its titular Last Guardian, adorable pupper monster, I knew nothing about it, and even with its release, I still don't. I expect a little more fanfare from such a long-awaited game release, coming on the tail end of 2016, but I'm intrigued enough to still want to give it a go. Speaking of coming out tail end of the year, Final Fantasy 15. Now, full disclosure, I don't play Final Fantasy. The last one I maybe sorta kinda played a little was... one of them had a Java in it? Anyway, this one looked great though, with fluid real-time combat system reminiscent of games like Dragon Age, which I love. It claims to be a brand new story, not requiring you to have played the previous 11,000 titles, but we'll see. Not usually into JRPGs as it is, but with almost looking GTA-like, this game looks interesting. except that the actual driving mechanic seems pretty awful from what I've seen, just being an on-rails fast travel. Anyway, I like party-based RPGs, having a crew to travel around a massive world with, even if they all look like members of a Reaper-themed gay boy band. Anyway, I assume there are other companions you can pick up along the way and replace these assholes with. I mean, that's kind of the main draw of games like this to me. That or character customization, which there is none. You have failed me! But anyway, it still looks like a ton of fun, and if it wasn't for the fact I am so busy in December, literally editing every day this or Xenoverse, I would have got it. Anyway, this concludes the bonus round. Happy? Moving on. Number 1. Alright, here we are at number 1. Once again, I just want to stress that for most of the games on this list from about 6 onwards, this was very close. The order isn't hugely important. Most of it's gut feeling towards these games. I mean, Stellaris jumped from 8th to 2nd on my third rethink of this list. But it has been a good year, better than I was expecting at the start of it, and a lot of these games are going to become personal favourites. That said, the pick I've placed at number 1 I do think deserves it. Now, it will not be for everyone. This game, and this genre in general, is an acquired taste. But for me, I'm happy to declare it my game of the year. XCOM 2. Developed by the same company behind Civilization, XCOM Enemy Unknown, to which this is a sequel, was the reboot of a classic turn-based tactical squad-based strategy about defending the Earth from a low-res alien invasion. I picked up the 2012 reboot right off the back of having played the original Fallouts and moving on to other turn-based games, and oh fuck, this game kicked the shit out of me. But on account of being stupidly addictive, with the customization of each individual soldier in your forces, stupidly satisfying going up against overwhelming odds and winning, and stupidly difficult with often pedantic rules and restrictions, as well as an infamous aim-hit chance always seeming to work against you. But I loved it, and eventually I saved the world by taking out the alien mothership with my affectionately named Alpha Squad. Good times. Unfortunately, that never happened. At least not according to the sequel, which decided that losing the game, as was so easy to happen, was actually the canon ending. As such, we pick up 20 years later on an Earth celebrating Unification Day, when the war against our peaceful alien benefactors was ended and humanity was uplifted into a new golden age of mass surveillance, military police, and forced urbanization. Perhaps then the biggest change from XCOM 1 is the dynamic this time around. Whereas before you were acting as first response to repel the invaders, XCOM is now an underground resistance inserting itself into occupied regions of the world to spread its influence and make gains against Advent, the new one-world puppet government. And before I go any further, yes, this is basically the plot of Half-Life 2. Right down to alien-enhanced human foot soldiers and a pretentious as fuck televised dictator. On the whole though, I welcome this change in plot. Yes, it's a bummer knowing my victory meant nothing, but why go through the same Defend Earth story again? Here we have a liberation story. You thoroughly feel like you're against the odds in this game, that the chance of an ultimate victory are slim. The Advent and alien forces, especially in the early stages of the game, are intimidating, and I couldn't help feel, more so than in the first game, the difficulty here, with higher tier enemies being introduced quite quickly, creeping up on you pretty fast. You'll be going up against armoured deathbots, shape-shifting slime monster and cobra ladies, while you're still spouting hockey gear and almost pointy sticks if you're not keeping on top of R&D. Here's probably a good point as any to bring up the biggest fucking pro of this game though. Customization! Have I mentioned I like customization in games already? No? Not even once? Even without mods, this has some fantastic character customization. Choosing from a vast bank of nationalities, voices, faces, mix and match armor, color, hair, headwear, class, personality, and then there's mods! The mods for this game, the inbuilt mod support, and this game's community is fantastic. I have had so much fun, purely in the character creator. Half the time I booted up the game just because I want to make some of my soldier ideas. Silly, badass referential characters, complete with modded outfits, flags, faces, and holy shit, the voice packs.
Alrighty then. Dag nabbit, damn it.
Here, this should give you something to think about. Surprise! Is he running from me? This one has brains.
Sniper's a good job, mate.
Let's move.
World War III! speed, you magnificent bastard.
Whether you want to make yourself and your friends characters from games or movies, or as I did, remix surviving members from old Alpha Squad from the first game, who in this alternate reality, where the raid on the mothership failed, have gone underground, the facilities to do so are amazing. Gameplay, as I said, is turn-based squad tactics. You man a team from 4 to 6 soldiers who are inserted by Skyranger into a combat zone anywhere in the world. Different environments and mission objectives can call for tactically different squad makeups. Some missions call for a tech specialist to hack terminals for intel, or for your squad to rescue or capture a VIP, or maybe it's just a straightforward sweep of an area. But since this game poses XCOM as on the underfoot, you have access to the stealth that the aliens employed on you in the first game. Meaning, so long as you aren't spotted, you could move around the map before they realise anything's up, allowing you to assess the situation or prepare an ambush. Using cover or moving as a team who complement each other with snipers, supports and specialists is essential, as well as bringing any equipment you anticipate needing. But, and I stress, this game is hard. Improvements in tech can close the gap, improve damage and survivability, but every action is dependent on funds, scientists to your HQ, engineers, facilities, and most importantly, time. The first game allowed you plenty of time to prepare and perfect your armoury. Here, both in missions, almost all of which have some form of timer, and in the overworld, moving on and making progress at all times is key, with Advent and alien forces themselves following their own set of objectives in the form of a sinister Avatar project. Missions that you set your resources to can slow this project's progress, provide ever-needed resources and personnel, or provide potentially crucial intel, but all take time, all carry risk, and it's up to you to make these types of calls, making it very easy to fuck yourself over with an underprepared resistance fighting a rapidly ticking clock. Again, hard. Every mission is legitimately intense, and it would be when your carefully and intuitively crafted characters face permanent death. Characters die in this. You'll almost certainly have to learn to accept the deaths in pursuit of the bigger goal. But with challenge comes satisfaction, and completing any mission in XCOM is rewarding. But so long as the gains outweigh the losses, so long as the invaders are shown humanity is still in the fight, we'll have victory yet. I mean, how can we lose with Sam leading the charge?
Oh, bloody hell, no, I can't be dealing with this. Tell you what, fuck off.
Well, that's the list. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the new year. Hopefully. Maybe.